The tension in Los Angeles reached its breaking point when Luna Nozawa, once a distant figure in the Forrester saga, made a dangerous play for control, first by targeting Steffi and then going after the unthinkable, the children. What started as a subtle manipulative scheme quickly escalated into something much darker, and now, the Forrester family faced their worst nightmare. Luna, who had already shown her ruthless nature, had no qualms about using threats and violence to get what she wanted. But what was her ultimate goal? For Steffi, the realization that Luna had turned her focus on her and her family sent waves of dread through her heart. As Luna's erratic behavior spiraled, the family had no choice but to brace for the storm that was about to hit them. For Steffi, the concern over Luna's increasingly volatile actions grew by the hour. Luna had already been a thorn in Steffi's side for some time, but now it was clear she had crossed a line. The evidence was damning. Luna had targeted her brother, Will Spencer, and threatened him with a gun when the police had come too close for comfort. The tension in the room was palpable as Will found himself in the crosshairs of someone who had no regard for human life, someone who, despite her lack of experience with firearms, was desperate enough to make the dangerous move. The gun in Luna's hands trembled, but Steffi knew she couldn't underestimate the danger that came with her actions. Will had narrowly escaped with his life, and the thought of Luna now wanting to use him as leverage was enough to send Steffi into a state of panic. Could Luna go as far as to abduct someone else to force Steffi into a corner? It seemed all too likely, and it was becoming more evident that Luna was willing to risk anything, including lives, to get what she wanted. Steffi's first instinct was to protect her children, and she feared Luna might try to use them as hostages, pulling them into the web of manipulation she had spun so expertly. The fear that Luna might come after them next weighed heavily on her mind. Steffi's immediate response was to take her children out of Los Angeles, to find somewhere safe where Luna couldn't hurt them. But that decision came with a series of its own consequences. Electra Forrester, Steffi's sister-in-law, had already been caught in the crossfire, and Steffi knew that Luna would stop at nothing to make everyone in the Forrester family suffer. Electra had already been targeted, and now, as Luna's schemes unraveled, Steffi realized that Electra would be the perfect ally in helping protect the children. Electra had agreed to assist Will in gathering the truth from Luna, but in doing so, she had only made things worse. Luna's wrath was not something that could be easily contained, and Steffi knew this. Her sister-in-law was walking a fine line, caught between doing what was right and facing Luna's fury. The stakes had never been higher. The situation was spiraling out of control, and it seemed as though everyone was being dragged into Luna's madness. For Steffi, the decision was clear. She needed to leave town. She couldn't risk her children's safety any longer. But she also knew that she couldn't leave Electra behind. Electra's talents with her jewelry business were vital, and Steffi knew that Electra could help her maintain some semblance of normalcy, even as the world around them fell apart. The question was, would it be enough to get them to safety? Would they escape before Luna's next move? Meanwhile, Finn had become increasingly aware of the dangers surrounding his family. As Steffi prepared to leave with the children, Finn found himself torn between the love he had for his wife and the deep-rooted desire to protect her, even from herself. His decision to let her leave Los Angeles with Electra weighed heavily on him. He knew she was doing it for the right reasons, but the idea of being left behind, separated from his family, tore him apart. His guilt over the situation was overwhelming. He had allowed Luna into their lives, believing that things could be handled, but now he saw just how dangerous his miscalculation had been. Finn couldn't allow Luna to continue terrorizing his family. But how far was he willing to go to stop her? And could he trust Sheila Sharp to help him? Sheila, who had always been a wild card, had offered her assistance in dealing with Luna. It seemed, for a moment, like a reasonable solution. But the more Finn thought about it, the more he realized that Sheila's help might come with a heavy price. Luna, now fully aware that she had no allies left in Los Angeles, turned to the one person who might be able to give her the leverage she needed, Sheila. The two women, bound by their shared hatred of Steffi and the Forrester family, could form an unstoppable alliance. Finn, however, refused to let Luna continue her reign of terror. He had to act fast, but what could he do? Could he trap Luna with the same manipulative games she had used against him? And more importantly, could he do so without putting Steffi and the children in even more danger? The idea of using Sheila to set a trap for Luna seemed like a dangerous game, but Finn had no other choice. As Finn attempted to plan his next move, the idea of confronting Luna directly began to take shape. He knew that he couldn't allow her to threaten his family any longer. If it meant sacrificing his own safety and well-being to protect them, then so be it. But how would he get Luna to trust him? How would he get her to believe that he was on her side, even as he plotted her downfall? He realized that Sheila might be able to help him, but he couldn't afford to trust her completely. The plan was risky, but Finn knew that if he didn't act soon, everything he had worked for, his family, his love for Steffi, his bond with the children, would be lost. Steffi, on the other hand, was still struggling with the reality of what was happening. She had left town with Electra, determined to keep her children safe from the chaos that Luna had brought to their doorstep. But even as she sought refuge, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Finn's absence, the unsettling silence, and the looming threat of Luna's return left her feeling vulnerable. She had made the right decision to leave Los Angeles, but would it be enough? Would they be safe? She couldn't stop thinking about the danger her family faced. And deep down, Steffi knew that no matter how far she ran, Luna would always find a way to pull them back into her twisted web. As the months passed, the Forrester family found themselves in a fragile state. Luna's presence in Los Angeles had irrevocably altered their lives. Steffi's departure had only been the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. A chapter defined by fear, uncertainty, and the painful consequences of the choices they had made. Would Finn be able to make things right before it was too late? Or would Luna continue to tear them apart, piece by piece? The answers remained elusive, but one thing was certain: nothing in the Forrester family would ever be the same again. The shadow of Luna Nozawa loomed large, and until she was dealt with, no one could truly feel safe. The air in Los Angeles grew heavy with tension when an unexpected revelation hit the Forrester family like a thunderclap. It all started with a phone call, a voice, unrecognizable but unmistakably familiar, that hinted at something buried for years, something that had haunted the Forresters and Spencers alike. Caroline Spencer's death, long accepted as an unfortunate accident, was now called into question. The words echoed in Ridge's mind, disbelief clawing at him as he listened to the anonymous tip. Caroline didn't die in that crash, Ridge. It wasn't an accident. It was planned. The voice on the other end of the line didn't reveal much more, only a cryptic promise that the truth about Caroline's death would be exposed, and that everything they had believed for years was a lie. Ridge couldn't process it. Caroline, his first wife, had been gone for so long, and her death had always been one of those tragedies they learned to live with. But now, the very foundation of the Forrester family's past was being ripped apart. Ridge's heart raced as he hung up the phone, the words reverberating through his thoughts. The entire Forrester family, already reeling from so many personal trials, was about to face an entirely new challenge. One that would force them to confront painful truths and secrets long buried. Ridge knew he couldn't face this alone, so he went straight to the one person who had always stood by his side through thick and thin, his mother, Brooke Logan. When he told her what had happened, her face drained of color, her hand gripping the edge of the table as if she were holding herself together. Brooke had always been protective of Caroline, even after her tragic death. The idea that someone would suggest foul play, especially against a woman she had once called family, sent a chill through her. Ridge's voice cracked as he explained, Someone's been hiding the truth, Mom. They said Caroline's death wasn't an accident. It was orchestrated, planned. And I don't know who to trust anymore. Brooke's mind raced as she tried to process the bombshell, but she felt an overwhelming sense of dread fill her. The idea of a conspiracy surrounding Caroline's death was too much to bear. And yet, deep down, a voice in her head whispered that this could very well be the truth. Caroline had always been an innocent, sweet soul, and the thought that someone might have orchestrated her demise was too monstrous to contemplate. But the more Brooke tried to dismiss it, the more the seed of doubt took root. Meanwhile, Thomas Forrester, the son of Ridge and Caroline, was dealing with his own turmoil. Thomas had grown up under the shadow of his mother's untimely death, and now, as an adult, he had tried to move past the pain. But hearing this new claim about Caroline's death sent him into a spiral. He had always believed his mother had died in a tragic accident. The thought of it being something far more sinister was too much for him to bear. But as Ridge and Brooke began to dig deeper into the mystery, Thomas's disbelief began to fade, replaced by a growing, gnawing feeling that something wasn't right. The pieces of the puzzle weren't adding up, and his instincts told him that the truth was about to come crashing down. The investigation into Caroline's death reopened old wounds as Ridge, Brooke, and Thomas, along with the rest of the family, were forced to confront painful memories. What was once a chapter of their lives they thought was closed was now opening back up, and it was clear that no one would be the same once the truth came to light. For Ridge, the idea that someone might have orchestrated Caroline's death tore at his soul. Caroline had been the love of his life, the woman he had shared so much with, and the thought that someone might have taken her away from him deliberately was incomprehensible. He had to know who was responsible, no matter the cost. Brooke, too, found herself drawn deeper into the investigation, but for a different reason. Caroline had been like a daughter to her, and the thought that her beloved stepdaughter had been taken away so cruelly filled her with rage. As the Forrester family started to piece together the events surrounding Caroline's death, more disturbing details began to emerge. The car accident that had been ruled an unfortunate tragedy now appeared to have been staged. Someone had gone to great lengths to make it look like an accident, to erase any trace of foul play. But the deeper they dug, the more they realized that Caroline's death was just the tip of the iceberg. As the investigation took shape, it became clear that the conspiracy went beyond just the Forrester family. People from Caroline's past, some of whom had disappeared into the shadows, started to resurface. An old acquaintance of Caroline's, someone with a history of shady dealings, suddenly became a prime suspect. The revelation that this person had been in Los Angeles around the time of Caroline's death made everyone suspicious. Ridge and Brooke had never heard of this individual before, but they quickly realized that this person might hold the key to unlocking the truth about what really happened that fateful day. But it wasn't just the Forrester family who had secrets to hide. As the investigation deepened, more and more members of their circle came under scrutiny. Even Steffi, Ridge's daughter, began to feel the weight of the past crashing down on her. She had grown up with the story of Caroline's death as an accepted truth, but now everything was being questioned. The idea that her family had been living with this lie for so long left her feeling disillusioned and betrayed. Steffi had always believed that Caroline's death had been the result of fate, that it was a cruel twist of destiny that had taken the woman she had admired so much. Now, however, she began to doubt everything she had been told. As the walls of the investigation closed in on the Forrester family, it became clear that no one was safe from the secrets of the past. Ridge, determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, pushed forward with the investigation. But as more and more pieces of the puzzle fell into place, it became clear that Caroline's death was not just a tragedy. It was part of something much larger, something that threatened to tear the Forrester family apart. The plot behind her death was tied to a web of deceit and betrayal that stretched far beyond their family, involving enemies both old and new. The shockwaves from the revelation of this conspiracy would reverberate through Los Angeles, shaking the very foundation of the Forrester legacy. The tension reached a fever pitch when a startling new clue surfaced. Ridge's worst fears were confirmed when it was revealed that the accident had been carefully orchestrated by someone close to the family, someone they never would have suspected. As the details of the conspiracy began to unfold, the Forrester family found themselves in the midst of a scandal that threatened to ruin everything they had built. Ridge, Brooke, and Thomas had to come to terms with the fact that the person responsible for Caroline's death was someone they had trusted, someone they had loved. The revelation hit like a freight train. Ridge, filled with rage and disbelief, confronted the person responsible for his first wife's death, while Brooke and Thomas stood by, equally stunned. The person's motives were as twisted as they were unexpected, and the truth left the Forrester family reeling. The very people they had once trusted, the people they had led into their inner circle, had conspired to take Caroline's life. And now, with the truth exposed, they had to face the consequences of their actions. For Ridge, the discovery was a bitter pill to swallow. The person responsible for his wife's death wasn't just a stranger. They were someone who had been in his life for years, someone he had never suspected. As the weight of the betrayal settled in, Ridge was left questioning everything he had ever known. The past had returned to haunt him, and there was no escaping the pain that came with uncovering the truth. The Forrester family would never be the same again, and as they picked up the shattered pieces of their lives, they realized that some wounds would never heal. Brooke, too, found herself confronting the depths of her own pain. Caroline had been a daughter to her, and to know that her death had been part of a larger conspiracy was a betrayal she could hardly comprehend. As the investigation wound to a close, the Forrester family found themselves grappling with the aftermath of the truth. Their legacy had been built on trust, on family, and now that foundation was shattered. The death of Caroline Spencer had never truly been an accident, and the truth about what happened that day would change everything forever. As Ridge, Brooke, and Thomas came to terms with the revelation, they were forced to confront the harsh reality of the betrayal that had shaken their family to its core. The loss of Caroline was not just a personal tragedy. It was a reflection of the darkness that had always lingered beneath the surface of their lives. Now, as they moved forward, they would have to rebuild, piece by piece, and find a way to heal the wounds that could never truly be erased.